Okay. How is everybody doing? You all good? Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. So we're going to talk about flyways as a mechanism to scale up nature positive impact in Asia and the Pacific. Now, I say Asia and the Pacific, but actually we're going beyond that, and we are going to talk about some of the other flyways in the world as well. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I would also say, I can't see it from here, but there is the QR code. So if you want a translation, please use the code. I think it should be there somewhere or other. It is there. Okay. Just a second. We're just putting it up on the second monitor if for anybody who needs it. So my name is Duncan Lang. I work for the Asian Development Bank. And yeah, it's great to be here today. We've got a great lineup of speakers for you. And I have to say that I'm really here. It was never the plan that I was going to moderate this event, which is, of my subject. My director was supposed to be here, but unfortunately she couldn't travel because she's had a medical issue with an eye, so she couldn't come over to Cali. So I'm standing in for her. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to have today is we're going to kick off with a nice message of support from one of our key partners, which is the East Asia-Australasia Flyway Partnership, Jennifer George, their CEO. We're then going to have Martin come up with his fantastic Flyways video, which is going to get us all excited, get us going, and then we're going to hear from him about Flyways more in general. We're then going to go to our moderated panel discussion. So we have Marshall. I think you won't be able to miss him. He's the guy in the hat. Then we also have Marie-Cecile from AFD. We also have Wataru-san from MOEJ and Ruth from the World Bank, who's here as well. So we hope we'll have time for a QA session. And then at the end, we have Jerka, who's going to come in from the Ramsar Secretariat to give some closing remarks. So if we can go to, oh, it's me, gosh. This is just going to be a picture of me, so you're not missing much. This is me 5 years ago. All right, next. Okay, so if we can now cue the message from Jennifer. Hopefully it works. Okay, do we have sound, guys? I think we're just finding the sound. I don't know what she's saying. I do actually. It's all very positive, but I don't. I'm not going to say exactly what it is. But
Executive of the East Asian-Australasian Flyway Partnership. Good morning, distinguished guests. I am Jennifer George, Chief Executive of the East Asian-Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat. It is my pleasure to welcome participants from both the East Asian-Australasian and American Flyways. I would like to acknowledge the Asian Development Bank, BirdLife International, Audubon, the GEF Secretariat, AFD, the Government of the Philippines and the Government of Japan for their valued collaboration. As we explore the topic flyways as a mechanism to scale nature positive impact, we must recognise flyways as living systems integrated with millennia of indigenous knowledge. From New Zealand and Australia all the way to the Arctic, Indigenous peoples' deep ecological wisdom, built on centuries of connection with migratory birds, is woven into the fabric of their cultures. To develop effective mechanisms for scale, we need to take into account their insights to offer pathways to harmony with nature that transcend conventional approaches and are key to achieving sustainable nature positive outcomes. The EAAFP, stretching across 22 countries, the full length of the globe, serves as a powerful reminder of our shared responsibility to over 1,000 wetlands, rivers, and coastal areas to safeguard the 50 million migratory birds that rely on them for good food and rest as they travel their superhighway in the sky between their breeding and non-breeding sites. Ensuring ecological connectivity, preserving and developing the ecological corridors along this vast flyway is crucial for the survival of these species whose numbers are as low as 400. We must work together. The EAFP provides a collaborative framework and innovative partnership for governments, NGOs, and international organisations to manage key sites along the flyway site network, maintaining the chain of internationally important sites for migratory birds to travel along. Our efforts are grounded in supporting biodiversity while also fostering sustainable livelihoods for the local communities that depend on these areas. Our strategic plan emphasises that effective conservation must balance ecological integrity with sustainable economic development. The Regional Flyway Initiative aims to scale up conservation by integrating this flyway approach into national and regional agendas, ensuring that wetlands are managed not only for wildlife but also for the benefit of people and climate resilience. The Regional Flyway Initiative, a regional financing mechanism, contributes to that strategic plan. Over the past 3 years, we have seen significant progress working with key sites in our flyway site network of 155 sites. I look forward to robust dialogues on how we can collaborate to strengthen our network of sites while advancing national agendas. Today's discussions will help us reflect on the Regional Flyways Initiative's contribution and guide future efforts. Thank you. I wish you a fruitful and inspiring event.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Virtual. Okay, so now can we, would you like your video first? Okay, so if we can go to the inspiring video, please. Thank you very much. So we're going to have Martin coming on after this. Okay. Fantastic. Right, Martin, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Duncan. And it's lovely to see you all. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Martin Harper, and I am the Chief Executive of BirdLife International. You okay? Oh, yes, that's okay. And again, for those of you who don't know BirdLife, we're a partnership of 123 independent national organizations operating in 119 countries around the world. And the reason why I wanted to show the video was basically because I wanted to bring birds into the room. We're here in Colombia where birds are everywhere, but I thought it'd be useful to be reminded this is what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about birds for the next few minutes or so, and hopefully that'll tee up the conversation about the Regional Flyway Initiative. So many of you will know that about 2,000 species of birds migrate. That's about a fifth of all the birds that we have. And every year, as Jennifer was saying, billions of birds migrate incredible journeys across oceans, across deserts, across mountains. And to give you an example of how incredible some of these journeys are, in the flyway, which we're going to be talking about, the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, the bar-tailed godwit does an extraordinary thing. It travels from Alaska to New Zealand in one hop, taking 11 days, covering 12,000 kilometers. These journeys are absolutely staggering. and that is the longest direct migration ever recorded by a bird that is essentially a terrestrial species. Of course, it's beaten by our logo, the Arctic tern, which essentially goes from the north to the south, 32,000 kilometers in one route. So birds are absolutely amazing. And the thing about birds is the bar-tailed godwit, for example, follows predictable journeys on its migratory pathway. And so most birds do that, and which is why we've been able to describe what we call these flyways, natural superhighways. And you saw in the video the 4 great flyways of the world. You can divide it up into 9, but we've divided it into 4. Here in the Americas, Africa-Eurasian Flyway, Central Asia Flyway, and of course the East Asia-Australasia Flyway. And the challenge for birds, of course, is to make sure there is sufficient habitat for them to be able to move across their breeding grounds, to be able to migrate safely, to actually then stop over at particular key sites. And that's what they need for their survival. And because and our challenge, of course, is to save the wonder of migration. And because birds know no boundaries, we have to make sure that we are collaborating across borders, which is why I believe flyway conservation should be absolutely at the heart of Target 1 of the Global Biodiversity Framework, which essentially is all about protecting integrity. Because to my mind, for a flyway, for it to be protecting its integrity, all of the sites that birds need across its range need to be protected. But as we all know, nature is in crisis, and migratory birds themselves are under real threat. So we know at the moment 10% of all migratory bird species are at risk of extinction. And when we publish the Red List of Birds alongside the broader update of the Red List next week with the IUCN, unfortunately, we will be giving you more stats about how the status of migratory birds, particularly shorebirds, will be deteriorating. So because birds connect people across continents and countries, they are a remarkable symbol of how we're currently failing to deliver the GBF's overall vision of humans living in harmony with the natural world. So we all know the pressures that nature is facing, and for migratory birds, it's primarily habitat loss, whether it's deforestation, water degradation, intensive agriculture, or urban development, but they also face other threats, particularly illegal killing, but also collision with human infrastructure, whether it's vast windows and big towers, or indeed energy infrastructure. And sadly, every year, hundreds of thousands of birds are electrocuted by transmission lines. So, but why does this all matter? And I've been mainly talking about birds. Well, it matters because if we fail to protect migratory birds and fail to protect the wonder of natural migration, then of course we will be failing on our commitments outlined in the Global Biodiversity Framework. But more than that, in many ways, the places that migratory birds depend on, whether it's the mudflats, the grasslands, the forests, they all have enormous value in their own right. And we know that healthy wetlands, for example, are absolutely central to our future food and water security. And of course, they're important in terms of disaster risk reduction. They're important for climate mitigation and adaptation. And as Jennifer mentioned, 1 billion people around the world depend on healthy wetlands for their own livelihoods. So what's our response? So we know that in order to tackle the nature and climate emergency, we have to transform our economy. We have to transform our food, our energy, and our industrial processes. And we also need to shift the money. So big discussions this week are going to be about resource mobilization. We know that we have a $600 billion gap in terms of supporting our ambitions around nature conservation. And we also know that Target 19A under the GBF, which obliges developed nations to deliver 20 billion by next year, we're not on track. Only 3 nations thus far have met those commitments, and 21 out of the 30 nations have failed thus far to even deliver half of what they're expected to deliver by next year. So while we continue to push on governments to bring the money to the table, we also have to explore innovative financial partnerships, which is exactly what we've started on with some of the development banks. And so when it comes to the East Asia-Australasia Flyway, the most threatened flyway of the world, as you heard from Jennifer, we formed this partnership with the East Asian-Australasian Flyway Partnership, but also the Asian Development Bank. And what we're trying to do is mobilize significant money, between 3 to 5 billion over the next decade or so, to protect and restore 50 sites across the flyway, 11 countries, and deliver, protect and restore more than 2 million hectares. And that will be delivering the triple wins for birds, for people, and the climate. And because this is a really good idea, we're also replicating it. And it's absolutely fantastic that we now have established a similar model here in the Americas with Marshall and the team, National Audubon Society, but also the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. And again, Marshall will say more about this later, we're mobilizing billions to try and ensure we have nature-safe human infrastructure while at the same time delivering some of these nature-based solutions. And the good news is that we're beginning to scale this up elsewhere. We're hoping to see progress with other investors in the Africa-Eurasia Flyway, but also the Central Asian Flyway. And to complement that big bank money, we're also trying to establish a civil society granting mechanism, because there are some things that only civil society can do. So within the BirdLife community in the EAAFP, we can help provide things like the vision, the strategy, and coordination to try and create these investment strategies to drive sustainable development. We can provide the scientific and technical evidence to identify which are the most crucial sites for birds and what is the value of those sites in terms of the ecosystem services that they provide. And also the things we can do is that we have an amazing civil society network across the flyway, and they can help us with biodiversity monitoring to ensure the sites are actually delivering for migratory birds. And of course, they can build those trusting relationships, both with indigenous people and indeed local communities. And we can innovate. So whether it's creating this integrated biodiversity assessment tool to help development banks ensure that their investments don't cause harm to nature, or Avastep, which is an avian sensitivity mapping tool to guide energy development, again, to make sure we don't cause harm. So together, we can deliver the glue, the roadmap, and hopefully the rocket fuel, which will help drive migratory birds conservation. And my final thought is this: I think we're building something very special. We're only just starting, but I think we're building something that's going to unite conservation across continents, which is, I hope, will help us live in harmony with nature. Anyway, over to Duncan to say a little bit more about this amazing regional flyway initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was great. What a great start. So I think you really set out where we're going with this, and it's really, it's hard to follow, sorry. Anyway, if we could cue onto my presentation. So I think it's very useful for everybody to kind of get a update of where we are with our Regional Flyway Initiative, because it's useful for everybody thinking about other initiatives to see where we're going. So I've got a bit of a summary for you today, I hope. Okay. Ooh. So I was just going to say what I'm going to say, and then I will get on with it. So I've kind of split it up into 6 parts here. For those who don't know what the Regional Flyway Initiative is, we've just got a background of that. Then what we have done so far in these different areas. So what have we done so far on stakeholder engagement, capacity development and knowledge? What have we done with our site selection and concept development? What have we done with our partnership development and co-financing? And then, interestingly, what projects have we got out of this so far in the last 3 or 4 years? And then where are we going in the next couple of years? So for those of you who don't know, the Regional Flyway Initiative, our ambition is 3 billion to invest 3 billion or mobilize 3 billion or 5, depending on how ambitious we are, in protection and sustainable management of wetlands in the East Asia-Australasia Flyway. This hits a number of different international agreements. We have Jerka here from the Ramsar Secretariat. It's EAAFP is linked to that, but we have a number of other ones, CMS and CBD. We're here in Cali related to that, and also the Paris Agreement too. For us, we feel that the investing in nature is going to be one of our key ways to deliver on one of our big climate commitment, which is 100 billion of cumulative climate finance by 2030. The initiative we have for the RFI is regional, focusing on the East Asia-Australasia Flyway. And while we have 8 countries, including the PRC there, we do also have done analysis on further countries too. So we've now done analysis up to 11, in fact. We're in the development phase, which will finish off, we think, probably next year, if not the year after that. But we're kind of overlapping now with the implementation phase. We're seeing some projects that are coming on board. And you heard our big ambition is this a number of wetlands that we want to safeguard and support and restore 2 million hectares of habitat. And I would say normally that most people would be kind of raising their eyebrows and going, ADB, flyways, wetlands, what are you talking about? I thought they did roads and bridges. Well, we feel that actually what we can deliver through the RFI is really about supporting people's livelihoods, climate adaptation, climate resilient wetlands, investing in healthy wetlands can deliver that. And as we are moving towards being Asia Pacific's climate bank, this is really the direction we need to go. So now moving on to where we are with our various things. What progress have we made in the last 3 or 4 years? Okay, so let's see. No. Okay, got it. Okay, so this is just a kind of view of a few things that we did in the last few years. We were at the last COP. There's Patricia there on the left talking about the RFI. We've done a number of knowledge products. We've done some capacity building on ecosystem services assessment in a number of countries. We've been engaging with governments at the different COPs, like this is at Ramsar, where we had bilateral meetings with 8 or 9 different governments. And we also presented to everybody at the Ramsar COP as well on the initiative. Oh. Once you get it, then it goes. So we've also been doing a number of activities in the different countries. These are full workshops we are running in different countries, Philippines, there, Cambodia, Thailand, and Bangladesh. We've done country workshops where we've talked to local stakeholders at some of our sites to find out what are the ecosystem services that they value, what are the threats to their sites, so that we can try and build the projects in the future, we hope, that deliver on their goals and their concerns and support the sites as well. So in terms of where we are, we've kind of split up the project into 3 phases for the concept development and the site selection work. We've done the site selection work, and I'll give you the results of that back in 2022. We've then been doing the liaison with the governments about those lists of the sites that we've been identifying, and we're now moving into that 3rd phase there where we're doing the early concept development. And we hope after that, we then can persuade people to move into actually doing pre-feasibility and actually doing investment projects with us. Okay, so I'm not going to get into this in detail because we could give you we've actually written a paper which we're going to submit on this to an academic journal on the site selection process. But basically, we're using internationally recognized criteria on the key species, what are their numbers, their thresholds. We use the Asian waterbird census as one of our key things. We have members from Wetlands International here, so their data is absolutely critical to making sure that we're identifying these priority sites. We worked through that process. We had a site selection team, and all that data took actually a lot longer than we thought, but the result of it was very good because I think one thing that the RFI brought to the table, which had never really been done, certainly not in ADB before, was there was a scientific rigor and a robustness of why we decided that these were the sites that really needed the most protection. That's not something that normally our approach with ADB is that we get the opportunities and then we try and deliver on those. But in this case, we identified the priority sites, and then we have been trying to advocate with the different governments that this is where you need to invest. So the results of this work, we identified 147 priority sites in our countries that we covered. This is our map with them all there. We have the smallest number of sites was in Laos, and then the biggest was in China, which was 60. The split roughly was 2/3 as coastal wetlands and 1/3 of inland wetlands. So going on now, you can see the numbers in a bit more detail there. And we've now moved from our first phase into our second phase, where we've been starting to talk to the governments. And so the dialoguing we've been having with the governments, we've asked them, well, what sites are important to you? What are the ones that you would like us to focus on? And so you can see here, the governments of Cambodia, Bangladesh, Thailand, Philippines, and Mongolia, they've given us a clear steer saying, we would like you to focus on them. So we're kind of fast tracking the kind of further development work in terms of the ecosystem services and the early concept development at those sites. But we're still dialoguing with the other countries as well to try and identify which are priorities to them. Oh, back one. Okay, so this secondary phase where we're talking to the countries, at the same time, we're also doing this ecosystem services assessment work. We're using the Toolkit for Ecosystem Services Assessment, TESA, as our base. We're working with a number of partners, I'll talk about them later on, who've been helping with us. And then we're using global data sets with GIS analysis type work, carbon stock assessment work, using invest models, costing for nature, etc. And then we're also talking to people on the ground at some of our sites as well. So the results of all that work, this ecosystem services assessment work, it helps us. What does it do? Well, it helps us identify the key natural assets for those sites. It identifies what are the threats, what are the potential monetary values. That's a challenge, we all know that, but it's something we feel that if you're trying to persuade a Ministry of Finance of why they need to invest in a wetland, if you can put some numbers on it, it makes that conversation a lot easier. I know from a moral perspective, some people probably find this a challenge to do that, but you know, when you're talking to the Ministry of Finance, you've kind of got to know your audience. It also identifies the drivers of threats, you know, the drivers of change, negative drivers, where the degradation is, and it also identifies the opportunities going through that process. And throughout that whole process, we also ensure we have that stakeholder engagement process with the governments and the local people too. And all of that work can then filter into the early project concepts. And we've now done about 35 of those. They're not quite finalized yet, so we don't have them to share with you. But at some point later this year or moving into next year, we will start to familiarize those with our governments and try and get them to really consider them in more detail. But the idea is that they would give you a rapid appraisal of what is the situation of that site. Those would provide an enabling environment to have those conversations with the governments for these potential investments. It would also identify the co-benefits. And I think for us, we're all aware that if I go to the government and say, I want to do a flyway project with you, they may be less interested versus if I went to them, if I want to do a sustainable aquaculture or agriculture project. So that those co-benefits there can then really help with that dialogue. And then also it gives you these concepts, it gives the recommendations for what the interventions might be, but they're obviously non-committal. And just to kind of give you a flavor for what the projects can have, we have done a model with 5 different ideas for project concepts that could come out of all this. And you can kind of see there from the graphic, but sustainable agriculture, aquaculture, ecotourism, pollution prevention and water management, all of those things are in there. But what we suspect will happen, and maybe we'll mention that later, is that our projects will be a mix of those type of things, all of them together. Oh, okay, it doesn't want to do it. Okay, okay. So in terms of the partnership and development and co-financing, so this is from where we've got gone from the beginning to where we are now. I thought it was kind of good to give an overview. There's a lot on here to unpack, but I will just do it at a high level. We did finally do an MOU with the East Asia-Australasia Flyway Partnership. We thought that was really important to embed that there so that we were really helping to deliver on their strategy. When we started off this project, I had initially got 1.2 million for this granting phase, but we've been able to raise an additional 500,000 for this work. But we've also importantly had some fantastic contributions from different organizations. The US Department of Interior International Technical Assistance Program, which is funded by USAID, has given us in-kind contribution. They gave us $100,000, but they've given us another grant now to do more work in 2025, which is fantastic. We also now have Jeff financing is coming into our project for a Philippines Flyway project that we've now, we're going through the approval stage. And we know that the Moore Foundation has also supported BirdLife International as well with some of their own financing. What I would say as well, and this is really just as a thank you to our partners, there's a lot of people that are involved in the RFI, and I think it's really important to say there's a long list of people here, many of whom are in the room, their organizations. This goes beyond just, you know, people, there's a, you know, a piece of work or a contract or something like that. People are taking up their own time, their resources to help this initiative, and we really, really, really appreciate it. University of Southampton, we have some fantastic academics there who've been coming and joining all of our things. It's really in-kind contribution, some of that work that they've been providing to us. And so we really hugely appreciate that. We've done lots of knowledge sharing events. We've had the FAO, UNDP, IBIS Rice, you name it. We've had lots of people and they've really been contributing. So as well as BirdLife International, the East Asia-Australasia Flyway Partnership, we'd just like to say a big thanks to all the other partners that have been involved in the RFI as well for their contributions. So just lastly now, I think I've got one more slide after this. Just where we are going. So, you know, we would hope by this point that we would made some progress and actually have some projects that are popping up. And the one big one that is we hope to get approved later this year is South Dongxing Lake in China. This project will be a loan with ADB of 150 million actually, but the total project is 310. I think Marie-Cecile may mention that a little bit later on. But the amazing thing about that is we're actually going to restore almost 12,000 hectares of wetland. And I was kind of struggling to think, well, what does that actually look like on the ground? And so I did a square over where I am from in Edinburgh, and it's like all of Edinburgh. And I thought, oh my God, it's absolutely massive. So, you know, I think we can be quite proud of that one. We also have another project that we're hoping to approve in China next year, Fujian Coastal Cities and Biodiversity Project. That will restore a really lovely estuary there, but it also has interventions at Minjiang Estuary, which is one of our highest priority sites in China, the most important one in Fujian province there. So that's great. And we also have a project, a grant project with the Chinese government on migratory birds that they actually requested for us to do, which is fantastic. As I said before, we have a Philippines Flyway project. We were hoping to have somebody from the Philippines government, but unfortunately they couldn't make it today to talk about that a bit. But it's a great project, and we hope to kind of build that into actually investment projects too. And I think that should be a model for what we do in other countries. In Cambodia, we have a project that actually is already approved, and it covers one of our sites in Koh Kapi, which is on the coast there. And in that project, they're doing ecotourism, community-based tourism, and also ranger support, along with mangrove restoration, which is not so important for the migratory water birds, but for the mangrove forest there, which is fantastic. They're doing that. And then we have a number of opportunities in Bangladesh. I just mentioned one, which is in the Har wetlands up in the north of the country. And there's lots of more opportunities in the Sundarabans and so on for the country too. So we're very excited about that. So my last slide, sorry to be going on for so long, is just where we go from here. So, as I said, we're going to finish off the TA phase of the project at the moment. We will get those concepts done. We will complete our capacity needs assessment work, which identifies the opportunities, how to support them. We should actually get that done by the end of this year. And we're also helping to support new membership of the Flyway Partnership. We've had some preliminary discussion with P&G actually, who are interested, and we are helping with that. Then moving into the development phase, I think it's going to be key to think about establishing, a partnership to monitor and verify, what do we do once we are doing all these investment projects? How is the monitoring and evaluation? And, how can this support the Flyway Partnerships strategy as well? We also need to do those development projects themselves. We hope I can move on to the push phase once we've done all the hard work of the development bit. And then the granting mechanism, as Martin pointed out, that's really going to be an essential piece of the implementation phase, where we have that granting mechanism to run in parallel with our investments, which will allow us to be able to get the civil society involved. And also, we were discussing this just the other day. There are countries that ADB is not working in so much, like Malaysia. Malaysia is a member, but for example, we don't do a lot of lending there. So having a granting mechanism that could support civil society to do projects in Malaysia, that will help with the supporting the coherence of the network, because you can't just miss countries out. You need them to create the network there. So I think that is it. I've got one which just says thank you. And now I can move on to the next part of the session, which is the panel. Thank you very much. Now, there's a reason why there are birds here. It's because people didn't give me their photos. So I did think about putting country-specific birds here. So we could have had a bald eagle. We could have had the coq from France, and we could have had the red-crowned crane from Japan. But anyway, I just thought I'll do it that way. So anyway, can I please ask our fantastic panel to come to the stage? We have Marshall Johnson, Chief Conservation Officer for Audubon. Thank you, Marshall. We have Marie-Cécile Thiron, Deputy Head Agriculture Biodiversity from AFD in France. Thank you. Please come to the stage. Thank you. We now have Ruth Tifo Sotomayor, Senior Biodiversity Specialist from the World Bank. Thank you. Thank you. And then we have Wataru Suzuki, Director, Biodiversity Strategy Office, Biodiversity Policy Division, Nature Conservation Bureau from MOEJ. Please come to the stage, Wataru-san, please. Thank you very much. So the way the panel is going to work, we've basically got kind of two questions. One is a kind of specific question for our first panelist, for the panelists, and then we'll go to one question which everybody will be asked. So if I could start with Marshall, if it's okay. So Marshall, we know Audubon has been heavily involved in the new Americas Flyway Initiative. What approaches or approaches did you take with your partners to push forward the Americas Flyway Initiative? And what do you say so far have been the toughest challenges that you've had to overcome?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Duncan, and really a pleasure to be on the panel today and be here in Colombia, the nation of birds and biodiversity. It's a few more fitting stages for the conversations and the discussions and the decisions that we will have and make here during our time over the next 2 weeks. You know, the Americas Flyways Initiative is truly a visionary alliance. And I think when I think about alliances, alliances work the best when at the heart of them, we are able to harness what individual organizations and groups and communities do best. You take CAF with their enormous experience in truly sustainable development and technical expertise, and their commitment to truly being a inspirational global leader in green financing of climate and biodiversity projects. That's a cornerstone member. Is it better if it's closer here? That's a cornerstone member of this alliance, right? And then you look at Audubon with its 120 years and BirdLife with 100 plus years of working across many different countries. What is it, Martin? 119 different countries. We bring a capacity for science that can really be in the heart of developing the projects from the ground up in partnership with the technical expertise from CAF to really center the science capacity in the decision making of these projects. So that's number one, is really being able to harness and catalyze which each individual partner does best. I think that's a hallmark of the Americas Flyways Initiative. And then second, I think being specific about the commitments that we are making. We're looking to conserve a vast area. We're talking about, if you close your eyes and think about the Arctic Circle in the north, all the way down to Tierra del Fuego in the south, and these vast landscapes in between. Being specific about how we're going to move the needle for birds, and knowing that when we move the needle for birds, we move the needle for biodiversity, we move the needle on climate health. And so we're looking to identify 30 landscapes and seascapes over the course and life of this initiative. Massive undertaking. And we are confident if we can usher in breakthrough restoration and conservation activities across those 30 landscapes and seascapes, we'll be able to protect 10% of the population of birds across America's flyways. That's a huge undertaking. And so I think what's worked is being specific and harnessing what each individual organization does the best. And challenges, you think since 1970, within the lifetime of most people in this room, we've lost fully 1/3 of our birds in the Western Hemisphere. 3 billion birds. And so you think about the enormity of these dueling, like two rattlesnakes, these dueling crises that are threatening ourselves, threatening our communities, threatening our birds. I think that's stands at the heart of what's the most challenging aspect of the Americas Flyway Initiative and any initiative. And second, I would say mobilizing more public and blended funding for this work still stands as a challenge.
Wow, thank you very much for that, Marshall. That was really helpful context setting for what you've been experiencing there. And I think we could learn a lot from you on our initiative, actually. But I think, knowing what people are good at is very, we've definitely been doing that as well. That's one of the things that's beneficial about working with civil society so closely, is there's some things we just, in the development community, we're not very good at, and you guys are, and that's it's so good to work together. So thank you, Marshall. So if I can now move on to Marie-Cécile. So thank you for coming. So can you share some of AFD's experience in supporting large-scale nature-positive investments? Why do you think this is something that development institutions should prioritize? And do you think flyways are a good way to do that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry my English will not be as good as American and Australian people, but I will do my best. So I will take a small path away from the Flyway Initiative, because I think you are all convinced now that it's a good initiative and we are going to support it. And as Duncan said, we are looking at financing with ADB, the Dongting Lake, south of Dongting Lake project. And it's really an interesting initiative. And what is interesting to know is that it's a loan that will be taken by the municipality. So I think it reflects the involvement of local authorities and the understanding of local authorities on the importance of rehabilitating all of these areas. So I would say migrating birds are something quite easy to work on. It's something that we know about, that we look at. In some countries, it's sacred. I mean, it's quite easy. It's much more difficult to work on wetlands. Most of the wetlands are looked as non-used lands, but there's even mosquitoes there. So, I mean, it's something to be drained and to be used. So it's nice to link it. Why I'm saying that is that in AFD, like most of the development bank, I would not put ADB in my thinking, but we are not so far. I think we used to look at biodiversity mainly through due diligence to try to lower our impact on biodiversity or project for conservation and biodiversity. I think we moved from that, especially since the Kunming-Montreal agreement. And we want now to put biodiversity everywhere. And I think the Flyway Initiative is a good way of looking at that. We go from something that is emblematic and we try to put biodiversity in all the activities that we will have in this area. And that can be very large, in fact. It's not only the lakes, it's not only the wetlands, it's anything that has an impact on these wetlands. So just to tell you that at least at AFD level, we used to be a development bank that tried to be aligned with the Paris Declaration on climate, and now we have decided to have this ambition for biodiversity. We want to be 100% aligned with the biodiversity global initiative, and that means a lot of things. That means, first of all, to eliminate all projects that will have a negative impact on biodiversity, net negative impact on biodiversity. That's very important. The next thing is that we have to be to have an analysis of all our activities, whatever is the sector, on the impact on biodiversity. We have developed a lot of different tools for that. I must say it's very heavy. And for my team, who are project team leader, it's just a nightmare. Make it, it's very difficult to be climate friendly, to be people friendly, to be biodiversity friendly. It's something very difficult, but we are really committed to do that. We have also some very concrete commitment. We want to have 1 billion co-benefit for biodiversity out of 12 billion we are doing annually. We want to eliminate, as I said, any project that has a negative impact. And we want to have at least 20% of our finance, biodiversity finance for conservation. So just to say that for us, the Flyway Initiative is one of the initiatives we want to support because it reflects exactly what we are looking, but much broader than only supporting the different projects that are on this pathway, on this flyway, sorry. We want to use that as an initiative to show that we have to look much more globally and not to focus only on birds. But I hope I didn't ruin your...
No, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we should all celebrate AFD for their ambition. I mean, that's fantastic. Well done. I would love it if ADB did that, but I think we've still got a journey to travel before we get there. So thank you, Marie-Cécile. And I think for us as well, we definitely see flagship initiatives are a good way to build support around, but it should be part of a broader umbrella strategy for supporting biodiversity. And I think we actually will hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be launching our Environment Action Plan at ADB, and that will be embedded in it. And flagship initiatives will be one of the things, but will be part of a broader initiative. So thank you very much. Okay, so Ruth, if I can turn to you now. So the World Bank, I mean, we're your little sister or brother. You have such a big global footprint. So, you know, from your perspective, do you see flyways can be a mechanism to scale up nature positive? Do you also think that we should be wrapping it up more with safeguards as well? Like, you know, for example, the energy transition, as Martin was talking about, you know, renewable energy. Do you think that we should be thinking about flyways both on the positive side and also on the addressing the negative drivers of change? Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you very much for the invitation to the panel and to panelists here present. Well, first of all, let me say that it's been a transformation in the bank, really, with the change of our mission. I don't know if many of you know, but now the World Bank has a mission for a livable planet. So a livable planet not only reducing poverty, but this adding to an institution at the World Bank to work together with the government and all the partners, private sector, agencies, for a livable planet is a tremendous change and a very strong message. So our president proposed this change, was approved by the board. So this has opened a lot of conversations internally and interest to support even more nature finance. And regarding this terminology, there is this new kid in the block of nature positive. So we have a different concept really related to nature positive. So let me refer more into nature finance, which is the term that for us includes nature mainstreaming and nature positive. Because for the World Bank, really, the application of our risk management framework, environmental social risk management framework, ESF, is a requirement. So not necessarily if I want to do it, it's a requirement for our lending. So in that perspective, yes, I mean, the ESF, as everybody, perhaps I hope you know, we have a specific standard on biodiversity. And because of this standard, standard 6, our projects and the governments that are borrowing funding from the bank has the requirement to fulfill to reduce impacts to biodiversity. And that will include also migratory species and these beautiful birds, these flyways, these migratory routes that still need to be known and understood by our clients. So referring to the migratory flyways specifically for Africa, we're very happy. We have the green light from our management that we are going to support it, especially in the sub-Sahara region. And this is linked to risk management with the energy sector because the World Bank has announced a mission 300 to power Africa. Together with our colleagues from Africa Development Bank, we're going to try to commit to provide electricity to 300 million people. 50 million will be African Development Bank and 250 the World Bank target. So that means that there are going to be many projects bringing electricity, power lines that will increase collision for birds, will increase risk to many species that are crossing from Africa, down to Europe and Asia countries. So we're going to work together with the ESF team to look at the risk management, how better can be applied to generate benefits. And on the other hand, we are going to look at the nature solutions. Nature-based solutions is an opportunity also to bring together not only the energy sector, but the other sectors, agriculture, water, even environment, and to bring together the other institutions that are also changing the landscape, but also can bring positive investments like restoration. So when we talk about nature-based solutions, we are very interested in the restoration of wetlands, restoration of riparian areas. And we have projects already ongoing in Nigeria, in Zambia, in Ethiopia, where we are restoring land that is important habitats for migratory birds and wetlands as well. So from our perspective, I think we are gonna be very happy to be a player, to be a partner in this initiative, and to scale up investment, which is probably very, very much need for really improving the degradation that is happening in many of these habitats, right? And we are looking forward to work with BirdLife International, trying to get technical knowledge to know this size, and following your steps, Duncan, that you have gone through all this process to select the best sites. But is the challenge that I see is how do we convince governments, right? And as you indicated, many times we are not going to be able to convince them because of the birds. These are important raptors. These are important sites for land birds. We're going to need to convince them with the ecosystem services, the food security, the importance of wetlands for fisheries, the importance of wetlands for water security. But so in some countries, perhaps ecotourism, right? But definitely it's an opportunity to improve the ecosystem for such an important and fragile species crossing so large areas where when they get to some countries, they are protected, they fly to another country and they're hunted, right? So we really look forward to coordinate better how our projects, the World Bank projects, can contribute to the migratory flyways.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you. That was great. And congratulations for your green lights. I'm excited to learn more where this goes. So thank you. So if I can now turn finally to Wataru-san. So thank you for joining our panel. We have a long relationship with the MOEJ. We have a MOU with them. So it's really great that you're able to join. So MOEJ has, we know, been implementing nature-based solutions for many years of wetland management in Japan. So since we're talking about scaling up nature-positive impact, can you maybe share how MOEJ is involved in programs in the region where wetlands and migratory birds and communities are benefiting? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. My name is Wataru Suzuki from Ministry of the Environment of Japan. And so I think birds should determine if Japan is doing good job or not. So, but we should say that we are trying to, work, serve for birds. And as Martin Harper, CEO, mentioned at the keynote speech, it is about survival. From Japan to Cali, it took 30, 40 hours. And we fly to Houston and Bogota and Cali. So if those one of all those airports didn't work, maybe I didn't arrive and I won't survive if cabin attendants did not serve water or food. So for birds, I think flyways, those wetlands are very vital for the survival, and we should be responsible to take part in the flyway. And for Japan, wetlands are very common. Japan is very wet country, but we need to provide rationale or meaning why we need to have those wetlands kept. Otherwise, we reclaim everything for houses and factory. And this flyway is a great tool for us to provide some kind of names or value to those wetty places. So, for example, Ramsar sites are very, very popular in Japan. So people willing to nominate their wetlands to Ramsar. And also we could provide justification to save those wetlands as it has significant role for migratory birds as a part of flyway. So I think this kind of initiative is great for the local communities and governments because as developed country, usually our local people would not be able to access to the finance. And talking about nature-based solutions, That is also very important to Japan because we have a lot of natural disaster like earthquake, floods, and heavy rain, and the wetlands are very beneficial to keep to prevent those disasters. So after the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, we put more emphasis on ecosystem based disaster reduction, eco DRR, and we have developed potential sites for eco DRR based on the maybe habitats for birds and other living things, and also potential for other benefits that site can could provide. So the mapping, we hope the mapping will help local people to take up those information and apply to their local development plan. So those are some examples from my country. Thank you.
Thank you, Wataru-san. That was very helpful, and I think the eco DRR is definitely something that ADB is getting much more interested in as well. Those ecosystem benefits these wetlands can provide. So if we have time, just about, we can have another round of question. But I'm just going to ask one question, and then we'll go to our panelists to see if they can just give their quick feedback on that. And then we'll just have, their final word, if you like, before we move to Jirka. So we are still having to work very hard to persuade governments and the private sector to invest in flyway conservation. So how can we scale up these initial successes we've talked about today, and where are the untapped opportunities that you can perhaps see? So perhaps if I can say ladies first, Marie Cecile, perhaps you give us a first thought from your perspective. Thank you.
I think it has been said by a colleague from World Bank. We have to speak with the same language with people we are working with in the countries. And as it has been said, we work mainly with the financial ministries because we are making loans. So we need to speak to them with nice pictures of birds, but also showing them the return on investment. I know, as you say, it's something that sometimes shocks people when we speak about biodiversity and return on investment. But we need to explain to our partners that it's not only a long-term investment, but it's also a short-term investment. And I think the example of Japan is very interesting in that way, because you can put forward not only food security, water management, but also catastrophe management or prevention. All this is money, in fact. So I think it's very interesting that you are working with different universities on better knowledge. Also, we need also to link it with all the analyses that are done on wetlands, roads, and impacts. But unfortunately, at one time, we need to come back to money.
Fair enough. Marshall, do you want to give your thoughts?
Yes, I think governments work best and are resilient when they take care of the needs of people. And so we talk about Audubon. We view our work, yes, in one half through the prism of birds, sure. But when I think about bird habitat like mangroves and coral reefs, these are not only important, vital habitats and ecosystems for birds, they're critical for protecting coastal communities. And so when we think about sea level rise and devastating storms across the Western Hemisphere, across the globe, there's this incredible pairing where it's really mutually beneficial to both biodiversity and the needs of people and communities that are being devastated by an increased, an accelerated storm regime. I think there's a real way to speak to what governments must be accountable to, and that's the safety of people. And so when we think about the safety of birds, oftentimes we're thinking about wetland habitat.
All that my visit to Incheon for the Flyway Secretariat 10, 15 years ago, we didn't imagine if ADB invest 5 billion. It was a discussion over some very very minor money to continue the monitoring of migratory species. So I think World Bank and DBs are now involved, and we should encourage those banks through governments. And governments are need to be responsible for taxpayers, and taxpayers are also bird watchers. So I think Audubon Society and all those, organizations are very, very strong power, I think, to encourage people, more increased taxpayers in that aspect. And also, I think for donors' perspective, we should require data to justify our contribution. Okay, how many birds increased, or what is the situation of the flyway, for example, and for the monitoring of birds mostly done by civil or scientists. Yeah. So I think those empowerment of the civil scientists should be also great. And I think we, in that aspect, maybe we can continue to work together and to enhance this exercise.
Thank you so much, Wataru-san. So that's great. I think probably we've run out of time. So what I would say is we've got a whole bunch of pizzas at the back, and so for your Q&A, just come and ask us. We can have it informally afterwards. So I think if we have any chance of finishing on time, maybe I can now turn to Jirka from the Ramsar Secretariat, who can give our closing remarks. So thank you. Please go ahead, Jirka.
Thanks, Duncan. Can I use the lectern here? I have scribbled notes as I've been listening to a fantastic discussion. And so I'll take a few minutes to reflect. My name is Jerker Tamelandra. I'm the Director of Science and Policy at the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands. And as I think all of you will know, the origins of the convention already in 1971 was very much a focus on water birds, migratory birds. In fact, the full title of the convention is the Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, especially as waterfowl habitat. And so we shouldn't perhaps lose sight of that. We've been, of course, very, very supportive of this regional flyway initiative of the Asian Development Bank. I'm very happy to see that the bank has partnered with the East Asian-Australasian Flyway Partnership, which is a Ramsar regional initiative recognized under the convention. We're happy to see the collaboration with BirdLife International, which is an international organization partner of the convention. And of course, on this basis, we've been pleased to also engage actively in the stakeholder group of the initiative. Needless to say, this initiative aligns very closely with the objectives of the convention. Many of the priority sites that you saw on screen will include wetlands of international importance. Many of them undoubtedly would qualify for designation as wetlands of international importance, and it's also something contracting parties along the flyway can consider. I wanted maybe to come back to the point Marie-Cécile made about how wetlands are sometimes seen, and you are right, there is a bit of an awareness gap or a perception gap here. As much as they have mosquitoes, they're also some of the most amazing and beautiful and dynamic and important ecosystems. And most importantly, they are central to delivering our global commitments under international treaty. These are not only treaty obligations, they're existential issues. Wetlands are really critical to big parts of the sustainable development agenda. They are part of the hydrological and climate cycle. The rainfall on land is dependent on the fate of wetlands. Many wetlands are the most effective carbon stores on the planet. They support adaptation, etc., etc. So in essence, to have a livable planet, we have to have wetlands in shape and in good extent and supporting these water birds and these migratory birds. Since we're here at COP16, I think it's good to reflect on how this connects very concretely to the GBF. And of course, it's quite simple, really. You look at targets 1, 2, and 3 in relation to area planning of conservation or management or sustainable use, restoration of inland water and marine and coastal systems, protection of inland waters, and coastal systems. Of course, this is highly critical, and it also relates very directly to species targets such as 4, 5, and 9. And so again, we see the convention, this Flyway initiative, it really is very central to how we deliver on the GBF. I want to come back to a few thoughts on the institutional partnership here and the funding model as well. One thing to emphasize is the important role of financial institutions. You know, they are the motors of development in many ways, and for them to then focus on these exceptionally important species and the habitats on which they depend, it directly provides for protection and sustainable management on site. But importantly, it also contributes to mainstreaming biodiversity. And I think we heard very clearly here, this needs consideration not just as something on the side, a biodiversity thing. It actually has to be mainstreamed again. Going back to GBF targets, it's explicit there. And this mainstreaming has to happen. It won't happen if it doesn't happen within institutions and within the planning frameworks we used, whether at governmental level or at development bank level. So I think this is an excellent example. It's also really crucial for the way it blends JEF financing or development bank funding with philanthropy, with the debt instruments. And so it looks at how do we leverage the different means at our disposal in a really effective way. And as such, I think it can be a really interesting model to study further, to support and to encourage replication and scaling of. And indeed, we really hope that this can continue to be replicated in all of the 9 major flyways around the world. So this is mostly what I wanted to bring to you here. Obviously, we look very much forward to hearing more about this at our COP15 in Zimbabwe in July next year. And hopefully we will have taken a few more significant steps forward at that time. Maybe my last point will be following up on something Suzuki-san said. And he said, the birds need to determine if we are doing well. And this is it, you know, we don't even need to ask them, because thanks to BirdLife and other IOPs of the convention and Audubon, you know, other partners, we can actually count them. And so counting them will not only tell us about birds and how they're doing that will also tell us a lot about how we are doing about our journey to sustainable development and a livable planet. And so I'd like to end there. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for putting on this session.
Thank you, Jukka. Thank you so much. So I think we can just draw that to a close. I'm just going to say a few acknowledgements, thank yous. So thank you first to Jennifer for her lovely message. Thank you to Martin for his inspiring remarks there. Thanks to our wonderful panelists. So thank you so much, Marie-Cecile, Waturu-san, Ruth, and also Marshall. And also thank you to Jukka for your wonderful closing remarks. I think bringing this in to contextualize what we're doing and how it can deliver for the different MEAs, you know, CMS, Ramsar, as well as CBD, is absolutely critical. And I think, you know, there's not enough money going around for us to do one thing for each. You know, we have to try and do everything together. I think it's absolutely critical. So I just finish off by just saying, you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for coming. There's a bunch of pieces out there. There's also a further event on the 30th where we'll be talking about flyways as well. And we're going to hear much more about the initiative with Audubon and CAF. So that will be wonderful. And I do have a bit of information if anybody wants more to know about the Flyway Initiative. I have a few things in my bag. So thank you very much. And you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you. Thank you.